So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining my session. My name is, I see a couple people still walking in, so we'll wait like a few more seconds. Guy on the phone. All right. So my name is Noam Wolf. I'm a tech lead manager on Google's Ad Exchange. I've been at Google for about 7 years now, exclusively working on ads. And I'm really excited to tell you about something my team and I have been working on for the past year. But first, I'd like to take you through a quick overview and the history of display advertising. Before I do that, I want to get an idea of who my audience is. So who here knows what display advertising is? Just show of hand. Oh, wow. All right, maybe I can skip all of my slides. All right, I wasn't expecting that. So I'll do this pretty quickly. Display advertising is generally considered anything that is of image form for online advertising. Now, image form could mean rich media, images, video. We categorize mobile in there as well. But we exclude search ads, aka text ads, even though Wikipedia doesn't make that distinction. But not everything on Wikipedia is true. So up to 2008, or leading up to 2008, display advertising was a very manual process. If anybody here had to do display advertising before 2008, you know what I'm talking about. Advertisers, these are the people that want to sell something or have their brand out there, right, would reach out to these websites, what we call publishers, and say, hey, I'd like to, advertise on your space, on your inventory. And the publisher would say, cool, that'll cost you X dollars for every 1,000 impressions. An impression is, as by show of your hands before, everybody knows, is when I load a website, I see an ad, we count that as one impression. So the prices were fixed. And the what and the when of my ads, like when were they going to show, who are they going to show to, were all predetermined. So it was all done offline. 2008 was, well, maybe I'm the only one that calls this the year of the exchanges. Right Media had an exchange, DoubleClick had an exchange, and AdECN had an exchange, and maybe there were some small ones. And these were platforms that enabled bidded buying of online advertising. Now, the bidded part is the interesting part, because this is where we went from fixed pricing to dynamic pricing. We ran second price auctions. This is a little different than Google AdWords generalized second price auction, because you really only have one winner, because you're going for one ad at a time. And advertisers would still have to preload their campaigns. They would have to basically tell us what they want to show, who they want to show it to. So all their targeting was done through a web UI, still the same thing. They'd actually have to upload their ad, what we call a creative, into our system. And at serving time, we would decide which ad won based on the bid that they associated with that ad. So a bid from the advertiser side would say, here's the max amount of money that I'd like to pay for showing this ad on your website. And the publisher, the website would say, here's the minimum amount of money I'm willing to receive. So the exchange kind of orchestrated all that, basically making it a platform. Ad networks, which I'm guessing some of you represent, would aggregate advertisers, so they would represent multiple advertisers, and bid on their behalf. Ad exchanges really introduced more transparency because of the fixed pricing in their reporting, something that ad networks at that time didn't really do. So fast forward to 2010, RTB, right? RTB was invented, real-time bidding. Real-time bidding was a way to do per impression decision making. Now I want you to really think about that for a second. For every impression, you're going to make a decision. You're going to make a decision of how much you want to pay, if you want to pay, maybe you don't want this impression, and you're going to pass the creative, the ad that you want to buy, that you want to show to the customer, to the user, in real time. So it's a real time. It's not really a protocol, right? But every exchange has a very similar set of details, of attributes, metadata that they pass on the server side to your bidders. These bidders, these are the pieces of software that are very, very non-trivial pieces of code, need to be scalable, need to be available because of two very strict constraints in RTB. These constraints are, one, exchanges typically require 100 milliseconds for you to respond to this bid request. So the page will load, the tag will call the ad server or ad exchange. Ad exchange will make a server-side call to the partners, to whoever is eligible to receive that call. These are the bidders. And the bidders are required to respond within 100 milliseconds. Now that's very difficult. So that's one constraint. Constraint number two is scale, right? Exchanges tend to be a bit chatty, and they also throttle without mercy. So if you don't respond to at least 85% of these requests, then you're going to be throttled, and you're going to miss on the impressions that you really want to get. So scale is a big deal here, and it's very big scale. This is, the keynote and every other session says Google scale. Well, RTB is probably the biggest QPS in all of Google. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of queries per second. And you have to make a decision per second for each one of these impressions. Did anybody just blink? Martin did. Well, that took him 300 milliseconds. 300 milliseconds to blink. 200 milliseconds to recognize facial expressions. So just to give you an idea what 100 milliseconds is, there's some cool facts about Ferraris and stuff up on the slide, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. But this gives you an idea of how much you have to do in that time. So why do I want to do RTB? Well, display is a $40 billion market, right? If it wasn't a $40 billion market, in the context of Google I/O, you probably wouldn't be in this room. And display is growing immensely. 59% of that growth is, 59% of that business is going to be attributed to RTB, which is growing faster than your static buying, which is non-RTB, it's non-real-time, if you will. And RTB in 2012 alone accounted for almost $2 billion. So we know what display advertising is. I think we reached that conclusion very, very early on. We know what exchanges are. We know what bidders are now and how difficult they are to build, right? And I think I met a couple of you who said that they want to build bidders, but they're not sure where to start. And we know why we want to build them, right? It's a very lucrative market. So what are my options? How can I participate in RTB? Well, today you have two options. Option one, you build it yourself, right? Hire an engineering team, you build out a data center, you figure out optimization algorithms, and to scale, you kind of throw money at the problem. And this gives you a lot of flexibility, right? You could do whatever you want. You could really take advantage of every single attribute in that protocol I just talked about. You could do whatever you want with it because it's your bidder, right? But you have to scale very, very quickly. And scaling in regular data centers is really, really hard and costly. So two resources, right? Engineering and machines, that's not something that everybody can just afford. Option number two, right? You hire somebody to do it for you, right? You go to a DSP, a demand-side platform that has a data center. They have an engineering team. They have optimization modules for you to use, and you still pay them to do it, right? You probably pay less than building out a data center. And they help you scale. But the downside is you don't get that flexibility, right? You kind of get a black box solution. Oh, you optimize for me? Great. Can I change? Nope. But what about no? Right? So I'm really, really excited to tell you about a third option today, and this is the Open Bidder. Open Bidder is a fully customizable toolkit that enables bidded buying on the exchange. It lets you manage your real-time virtual machines. And if any of you attended Navneet and Martin's talk yesterday, you got a little bit of a demo of how fast virtual machines start up in GCE. So GCE, Google Compute Engine, which have a pretty dominant set of talks at I/O, and I urge you to see the ones that are still left to see. But they really talk about how GCE is really good. The reason that we even integrate with GCE is because, and I pulled this out of their deck on the next slide, is that during peak hours, GCE will provide 20% lower latency. Now, I can probably repeat all the stuff that Navneet said, but one thing that really caught my attention was the per minute pricing as opposed to the competitors, you have to pay per hour. Now think about 100,000 of impressions, requests per second, right? If you're only responding 10 minutes out of the whole hour, you still get a lot in, and you don't have to pay for the whole hour. So GC really provides a huge value in this context. The latency for bidders is a huge deal, as we mentioned before, and we really want to lower the bar of entry. So we want to give you back as much of that 100 milliseconds as we possibly can. So instead of spending 40 to, worst case 80 milliseconds just in network traffic, we want to minimize that, ideally, sub 5 milliseconds, but I can't quote numbers just now. We want you to focus on cool innovation. We want you to innovate in RTB. Something that I didn't prepare for in these slides, and I'm really happy to share with you, is somebody walked up to us at the booth today, and he said, "Why doesn't Google sue all the ad blockers?" I was like, "All right, let's see what this guy wants." I said, "Well, ad blockers, it's a business. People don't want to see ads. Our responsibility as advertisers is to show the right ad to the right user at the right time. However, we're kind of restricted with the players out there. We either use a solution that exists, or we build something from scratch and we spend a lot of time and money doing it. So I really believe that this toolkit, one of you guys, my fellow colleague developers, can go out and build something that'll be better or fairer than ad blockers, right? Because this guy's thing was, well, it's not fair, it's theft, right? You're stealing the money from the publisher because they're not showing ads, so they're not getting paid. And I said, that's a good point. Like, so you're a publisher? He's like, no, I write ad blockers. That was really not prepared. That really happened today. Anyway, I'd like to walk you through life of a bid request real quick in the context of OpenBidder. The red outline is Google Compute Engine, where our virtual machines run OpenBidder servers. We'll use the DoubleClick Ad Exchange by Google as an example of an exchange, sending an exchange-specific bid request into OpenBidder. OpenBidder receives this request and translates it into a normalized protobuffer internal to OpenBidder. This is pretty nice. It lets you be flexible to support other exchanges. We don't want to be only tied to DoubleClick Exchange. This is an open source toolkit. Will be an open source toolkit. And you get to run through these stack of what we call interceptors, and I'll talk in detail about those interceptors in a few seconds, where you run your custom logic. So remember before I said we want you to focus on your custom logic? This is the piece that you write. This is your secret sauce. So you run through the stack with the OpenBidder specific proto, and then you run back up the pipe with a response. We have a life cycle. You can do pre-processing, you can do post-processing, and again, I'll talk about that in a second. And the bid is then sent back to the exchange, all within 100 milliseconds. So let's go out, let's take a step back and look at the ecosystem. So the ecosystem has been plugged for GCE in every single session, and we're actually using all these things. And I thought it would be cool, to put everything together to kind of a real business on GCE. So cloud storage, you get your persistent disk, you get it sticky to your sessions, to your virtual machines. We use that in the core of OpenBidder to store metadata, et cetera. I think the sample app that Joe wrote, if you were at the GCE tech session, they actually passed the Go code as metadata, which I thought was pretty cool and smart. Google BigQuery will let you analyze the data in your logs, basically whatever you want. But in this case, what you're interested in is in logs, right? What did I bid? How much did I bid? How much did I end up paying when I won? Right? It's a second price auction, so what you bid isn't necessarily what you're going to pay. And we have a prediction API, which I personally think is really, really cool, especially from a computer science point of view. You get to train your models. You could do this with train requests, and you could do that asynchronously, right? It shouldn't affect your 100 milliseconds. But you can also request a prediction in real time. There's one more thing that I left out, which is you. I think this could be a very nice community for you guys to add value to the space, right? If you think you can do better than prediction API that Google provides, then you should go out and do it. And you should use our APIs to plug in and charge for a service. You're going to be hosted on the same network inside Google, right? And everybody's going to benefit from this. We talked about locating your virtual machines within Google. This lowers your latency. And we talked about scale, right? You can start instances up very, very quickly, as the demo showed. And you have all of these value-add services. So one thing I didn't mention is App Engine. Currently, we use App Engine to configure our virtual machines. We have a configuration UI. You can start and stop your virtual machines. You can see your resources, kind of what your state is. We have plans to move that to a more hosted environment, but we can keep that around, and we want to hear from you if this is something that's useful to you. BigQuery, I want to plug it again because there's a talk right after this that has a demo for BigQuery about crunching terabytes of data, and you get really cool visualizations. So, if you want to stick around after this for the next session, then they'll talk about BigQuery. So, we know that all of you kind of raised your hands when I asked if you know what display advertising was. Who here is a developer? All right, sweet. Who wants to see some code? All right. But before that, just a few features of OpenBidder that are really important as part of this stack. Obviously, we support bidding, because we're a bidder. And we support click and impression callbacks, right? So you won the impression, well, how do you know that you won it? So a lot of these exchanges have macros that allow you to set up callbacks and fill those macros in with a winning bid price, for example, so then you can use that to log and do your own optimizations. Cookie matching, I'm sure everybody knows what that is. For remarketing, we also support that out of the box. So here's some code. I promised our Interceptor model, which is heavily based on the Java Filter API. So if you know or have used the Java Filter API, none of this should be earth-shattering. But at the core of OpenBidder, we have two interfaces. We have an interceptor chain, which is responsible for the lifecycle, right? You have access to the bid request and the bid response, and you can chain these interceptors. And then you have the interceptor API, not surprising, and it has an execute method, right? So each one of these interceptors, when implemented, you can get executed by the workflow, and you can, like I said before, do pre-processing and post-processing steps. So here's a sample interceptor. It's my secret sauce interceptor, and not surprising, it extends bid interceptor, and you get, through the execute method, you get access to the chain. And notice just at the very bottom, I call chain.proceed. So anything before that is going down the stack, right? So I go interceptor by interceptor by interceptor going down. Any work that I do after chain.proceed is on the way back up. And this is really cool for logging, if you want to have access to decisions that other interceptors made. So this interceptor basically grabs the requests, asks for the pre-targeted ad units. These are ad units from DoubleClick's ad exchange that you've set for pre-targeting through AdWords UI, or the ad exchange UI, and you build these new snippets. What price you should charge for them? Well, that's your secret sauce, right? Highlighted in bold. Favorite quote of mine, or one of the favorite quotes that I have from one of our beta testers, and we've actually been beta testing for a while now, is that they really love the flexibility of what we've provided, and they've seen some results that they really want to move their spend over to OpenBidder. I saw some smiles here. I don't know if you're the client, but I won't out you. So I'd like to wrap up with a little bit of product vision. Where are we going? Where do we see ourselves in a year from now? And our product vision really circles around three main categories. The first category is additional components. We have a dedicated team. They're actually sitting up front here, and I'll introduce them in a second. And we are fully dedicated to this open source toolkit. So we keep adding more value. We keep listening to feedback, and we keep enhancing our offering. We gather feedback either through a forum. We're probably going to be on Stack Exchange when we open this up. And we look to hear for feedback, as much feedback as you can possibly give us. And the beta testers will attest to the fact that we're very responsive. More GCE. So you heard about a new load balancing service from GCE. We're kind of at the forefront of the new GCE stuff. GCE stuff comes out, we test it for them at our scale. And so you're immediately going to get that. I think that's a really, really cool feature. And then the last, but absolutely not the least, my personal favorite part of OpenBidder is the community. So we will open source this after we're out of beta. We want to see the community give back and grow, because I really believe that, OpenBidder is the platform for RTB innovation. And we can get rid of stuff like ad blockers with a much smarter solution, which I'm sure many of you are thinking about right now, already know the solution for. And there's no reason why you can't, monetize that and, save the web at the same time. So I want to leave you with one very last quote from our friends at 12fold that saw this when we pitched it to them, I don't know, it was like 14 months ago. And they said, there's a huge gap in the bidder landscape for custom logic. OpenBidder, which was actually a different name back then, is a brilliant idea. Where do I sign up? Well, today you can sign up for our beta process. Our documentation, as you can see at the bottom, is open source now, so you can go there right now, see what we have in store for you, what we can do, our capabilities. And when you sign up, we can whitelist you for our code. I also have the QR code in the corner. That's actually not the code. It's actually rating the session. So you can either scan this. I'd be very happy to hear any feedback about this specific session, what you want to see more of, etc. And there's also a QR code in the back. And I think that's about it. I'd like to spend the next maybe 10 minutes to answer some questions if you have. And I'd like to call up the team. So we have William Shields, our tech lead, Jinan Wang, our UI guru, and Osvaldo Didlerian. I can't pronounce his last name, the back-end lead. So come on up and let's see if we can answer some questions. Or should I ask if you have any questions first? Thank you. Perfect, thank you. Sure. I think this is being recorded.
Hi. So is the bidder agnostic to what kind of inventory it's going to bid for? So if it's mobile apps or mobile web or just plain web, does it make a distinction, or is it completely agnostic to that?
So the bidder is a platform. We are worried about infrastructure. The logic of what to bid for and what you're eligible for is on you. You have access to the proto, to the request, so you can basically see if it's mobile, if it's video, and whatnot, depending on those attributes.
Hey guys, what cookie space do you support? Would we, have our own pixels that we'd map to, or could we leverage DoubleClick?
Well, we support out of the box the DoubleClick cookie matching, so that probably has the most value from what you're looking at, which is to match to the DoubleClick cookie space.
Cool. And do you support OpenRTB?
I can neither confirm nor deny our particular status with OpenRTB. We've thought a lot about the problem of cross-exchange buying. This is still actually a work in progress, so we've got nothing concrete to announce on this particular regard, but it's certainly something we've been thinking about.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for coming out, and we look to see you innovating RTB.